Welcome back. I'm Kimberly and this is Floral Art Online. And my voice is a little bit croaky today, so we'll see how we go. This video is in our series of Designs Dissected, where we're looking with our AI DesignEye at some designs in terms of the principles and elements of design to see what I got right in them and what I could have done to improve them. It's an educational series, and I encourage you to submit your own images of your own designs and get this feedback for yourselves, because it's a great way to review designs and to learn a little bit more about what you could have done with the design that you produced. This week we're looking at two designs. One was a demonstration piece that I did many years ago now, and it's called Black and White. And the other is a competition piece called Gumnuts and Branches, and it is a wall hanging with no backing. This is our first design. As I said, it was a demonstration piece with the working title of Black and White. What I was hoping to do was to highlight how you can use plant material that's not quite perfect. So normally the pineapple lilies, the cucumbers that I've used there would be the straight up and down ones, the up, as I have with the vertical placements. But oftentimes, in my experience, they don't grow like that. They're the exception rather than the rule, and you get these wonderful twisted shapes. And so I wanted to showcase how you could use those shapes as part of getting movement into your design. The black and white part of the design is all the non-plant materials used, so the painted base, the wool-wrapped perspex circle, the timber shape at the bottom is actually a branch with some holes drilled into it, and then perspex rods pushed through the holes, and then black and white stocking material stretched over it to give it that interesting looking shape. Now, if you're interested in how to do that particular technique, you'll find there's a step-by-step instructions on the website. So let's now see what DesignEye can tell us about this particular design. We look first of all at colour. So the colour palette is limited to black and white, creating a bold and graphic statement. The white flowers of the eucomis and the black container provide high contrast, so that's the black base at the bottom of the design. In terms of line, the lines created by the stems and the flower petals are mostly vertical and straight. The lilies have a strong singular line, while the feathery white flowers add a touch of softness. Now, it's probably not as obvious in this smaller image as it is in the big images at the start, but they are like little star-shaped flowers all over the stem of the pineapple lilies. Shape, there is a variety of shapes in the arrangement, including the lilies and their stems, the stocking structure, and the round wool-covered perspex. This variation in shape adds visual interest. In terms of texture, the design has a variety of textures. The lily stems have a smooth texture, the flowers have a feathery texture, and the container, or the base, has a matte black texture. This variation in texture adds depth and interest. In terms of space, there's a significant amount of negative space between the flowers, which creates a sense of balance and prevents the arrangement from looking too crowded. So it's talking here about the space, not just the space between the two upright placements of the eucomis, but the space that your eye fills in between those two placements and the two placements at the base of the design. All of that still forms part of the design, all of that negative space. In balance, the design uses asymmetrical balance. The lilies are placed off-centre to the left, but the visual weight is still balanced by the lower placements of the design. Emphasis, the lilies are the focal point of the design. Their large size, bright colour and placement draw the viewer's eye. So that if you put your hand over the image, as I'll often say to you, and you took out those two vertical placements and we just had a long horizontal design, their actual focal point would be that perspex round, which we don't want. We want plant material to be a focal point in your designs. Movement. There is movement in the design due to the contrast of the straight vertical lines of the two upright lilies and the curved line of the lower lily placement. So whilst we're repeating the plant material, we're changing the lines and making it a bit of a contrast. And that's what you can do. If you've got plant material, the same plant material, but you've got it in various shapes, that's a great way to create some contrast in your designs. Proportion. The flowers are all in proportion to the size of the base. The lilies are tall enough to add height and presence to the arrangement, but not so tall that they overwhelm the lower section. So we've got, in terms of bulk, we've got quite a lot of the bulk of what is in the design across the bottom half of the design. But because of the striking nature of those two verticals, we don't feel like it's bottom heavy, to coin a phrase. Rhythm. There is obvious repetition of shapes or colours to create rhythm in this design. In unity, the limited colour palette and the stark contrast between the black and white elements create a strong sense of unity in the design. It's interesting, isn't it, that a contrast in colour is going to create unity in a design. While the design is already quite striking, so this is our DesignEye AI suggestions. One way to add a touch more movement could be to introduce another curved stem or two. This could create a more dynamic visual flow and counteract the strictly vertical lines of the upright lilies. So that would be an interesting exercise for me to try out. I certainly got plenty of those curved shape of the pineapple lilies that I could try. And in fact, on the website, you'll see there's another couple of designs where I used only the stems that were curved and placed them in a table centre and had great movement. I really loved it as a design. Another way to add more visual interest could be to incorporate a few black or white decorative elements into the arrangement. For example, black or white pebbles could be placed on the base, or black pods or twigs could be added to the arrangement. So I'm not a big one for using pebbles and stones in my designs. It's certainly perhaps a couple of black polished stones just on the base, at the base of where the circle is, would create something. It's another contrast in terms of form and texture, because it's going to be shiny and black, glossy black, just 3 or 4 pebble size ones. But I do like the idea of the black pods or the twigs, because I think it's another plant element that could be added to it. And it's going to have a different shape, so it could be somewhat circular, and I might have it in the middle of the perspex round. So that gave me a few things to think about in terms of extending this design a bit further had I wanted to use it for something else. So in summary, overall this is a well-designed floral arrangement that effectively uses the principles and elements of design to create a simple yet sophisticated composition. The limited colour palette and the bold contrast between the black and white elements create a dynamic and eye-catching design. With a minor tweak, like introducing another curved stem or some decorative elements, the artist could take the design to an even higher level. So thank you, DesignEye. I'm very happy with that. Now let's move on to our next design. Our second design this week is titled Gumnuts and Branches. As I said, it was from a competition a few years back now, and it was required to be a wall hanging of a particular size with no backing to the wall hanging. My idea with this was to make a frame of bundled branches and decorate that with the gum nuts, and I've done that by drilling through a hole through them and putting them onto a flexible wire so that I could manipulate them into all sorts of different wavy positions so that it looked like it was threaded through. And then I added to that design, for some colour and for some variation in texture, some semi-dried gum nuts of different shapes to the ones that I'd put onto the wires, and also some fresh eucalyptus leaves. The design itself placed second in the competition. So let's see what DesignEye can suggest for me. Colour, first of all. The colours in the design are natural tones of brown, cream, beige, and a hint of green. This creates a rustic and earthy feel. The lines created by the branches are strong and organic. An interesting term for a line. Some branches are straight while others curve and meander. This variety adds visual interest. The shapes in the design are natural and irregular. The branches have elongated shapes while the gumnuts are round or oval. This variety in shape adds interest. Texture. The texture of the materials varies considerably. The branches have a rough and bark-like texture, while the gumnuts appear smooth and hard. This variation adds depth and interest to the arrangement. the space, since it's a wall hanging, negative space is crucial. So interesting that our artificial intelligence assessor has recognised that that is an important part of this kind of design when it's got no backing. The way the branches are arranged creates a balance between the positive space occupied by the branches and the gumnuts and the negative space of the wall behind it. So it's looking at the negative space as that space inside of the frame, which is great because that's how I designed it. Balance. It appears that the design uses asymmetrical balance. The branches and gumnuts are spread out in a way that creates a sense of visual weight distributed across the hanging. Now that might, of course, be weighted somewhat by the angle at which the image has been taken, but it's probably fairly accurate as well. Emphasis. There is not a clear focal point since the elements are spread out. However, the arrangement of the branches could draw the viewer's eye in a particular direction, creating a framework for other parts of the design to be discovered by the eye. Movement. The winding lines of the branches create a strong sense of movement in the arrangement. The gumnuts appear to move in and out of the design, once again creating a sense of movement. The branches and gumnuts, this is in proportion. The branches and gumnuts appear to be in proportion to the size of the wall hanging itself. The scale of the element seems appropriate for the space it needs to fill. So once again, looking at proportion and scale and making sure that they're relative, not just to one another, but to the overall size of the space that you've been allocated for the competition for this design. So rhythm, there's obvious repetition of shapes and colours to create rhythm in the design, and unity, the use of natural materials and the earthy colour palette create a sense of unity in the design. So somewhat different. In the first design, in the black and white one, we got unity because there was contrast of the colours, and now because they're in the same palette, we're getting that sense of unity in this particular design. So our suggestions now: to create a stronger focal point, consider clustering the gumnuts in a particular area of the hanging. This will draw the viewer's eye and add interest. Now this is a suggestion only if you want a focal point in the design. Oftentimes we will talk about having a focal point or having an interest-equated design, which means that there's no one point that draws your eye first of all. So you'd have to decide in terms of the style of the design that you're putting together whether you wanted a focal point for the design, whether it was important to have a focal point in the design, or whether you wanted an interest-equated design. For a more dynamic composition, incorporate a few straighter branches among the winding ones. This will add contrast and visual interest. So it would make it dynamic. I like the organic feel of it personally myself. So that's probably a suggestion I wouldn't take up. I could try it, but I know that looking at it I wouldn't like it. And having said that, I will often find that the designs that I really don't like are the ones that the judges tend to like. Since it's a wall hanging, consider how the piece will cast shadows. You can use this to your advantage by arranging the elements in a way that creates interesting shadows on the wall. Now, this is something I hadn't thought about, and yes, most certainly we were told that it was going to be hung on a black background, and so there would have been some sort of shadowing because lights would have been on it for the judging and for the public to view it. So an interesting thought that I hadn't considered, so thank you to DesignEye for that suggestion, and it's certainly one that I'll consider in future when I'm doing wall hangings that don't have a backing on them. So overall, in summary, this is a rustic and interesting wall hanging that uses natural materials to create a decorative piece. By incorporating some of the suggestions and using the principles of design effectively, the designer can create an even more visually appealing and eye-catching design. So there are our two designs for this week. We have black and white and the Gumnuts and Branches wall hanging. As always, I encourage you to submit your images to DesignEye and get some feedback for yourselves. It's just a matter of uploading an image of your design, and within a few hours you will have the AI analysis of your design. At this point in time, we're still reviewing manually those analyses just to make sure that it's going to give you the right kind of feedback that you can understand and you can follow and you can take on board. So that's it for this week. I'm Kim Bailey and this is Floral Art Online Designs Dissected.